Have you ever spent days obsessing over a production only to get crickets when you finally share it? Whether you're producing for another artist or making your own music, it's tempting to blame the algorithm or assume that people just don't get what you're doing. But if the music itself isn't creating a genuine emotional response, it doesn't matter how many plugins you used, how perfect the mix is, or how much time you waste chasing the latest marketing hack. So in this video, I'm going to share 12 principles I've learned from 3 decades in the studio to make sure every artist I work with and every song I work on stands out and connects with real human listeners. But before we get into these principles, I want to share this simple framework which might change the way you think about your own productions. Now, this is a metaphor which I'm going to oversimplify to keep the video moving. It is a tool, not a rule, so don't take it literally, okay? Let's imagine that there are 3 archetypes that influence everything we do in the studio, from writing through performance, recording, programming, and mixing. First, we have the engineer. They're the technician that makes everything work. Next, we have the artist. They're the character, the identity that gives the work meaning. And finally, we have the producer. They're the guide that gets you over the finish line. When all 3 of these archetypes work in harmony, you get great art that resonates. But here's what's cool. This doesn't mean the archetypes need to have equal influence. There's great records that lean on the technical prowess of the engineer. It's got precision, focus, power. There's incredible music which is dominated by the artistic spirit. It might be barely holding together, but the engineer and producer are wise enough to give space for something compelling, spontaneous, and free to come through. And records that have the producer at the fore can be wildly creative through a type of freedom that emerges from inventive process or clever constraints. They spot an opportunity nobody's thought of before, and it opens up a whole world of possibility. But if any one of these 3 archetypes gets squeezed out, or if they never show up, there's a problem. If the producer isn't in the room, we don't finish any music. If the engineer disappears, the ideas have nowhere to go. They're never captured. And if the artist gets marginalized, then there's no resonance. There's no meaning, no emotion in the music. There's nothing for the listener to respond to. So bear these archetypes in mind as we go through these 12 principles and think about how the balance between these roles applies to your own production, whether you're making music for your own artist project or if you're behind the scenes like me. The first principle is one of the most foundational choices you can make about your music. Are you trying to fit in to an established mold, or are you trying to push the boundaries? It's common and perfectly natural to feel that you want to make music like the records you love, or to fit into a genre that inspires you, or even where you think you'll have the best chance of success. But if your music isn't getting a reaction, it might be that you are creating from a place of should, imagining what you're supposed to do, rather than a place of could, where you let your own creative process lead you to new, unique places. That's why the first principle is this: you're either a trailblazer or riding on the bandwagon. Without even realizing it, you can wind up blending in, being anonymous, because the middle of the bandwagon is where the ride is the most comfortable. All the signposts are already there. The path is well worn. So go be a trailblazer, right? Be bold, be fearless. Well, easier said than done though, because here's the thing. When you're out in the uncharted terrain, hacking through the overgrowth, it is hard. It's unproven and it's risky. But getting comfortable with that risk will often create the unexpected results. Music that catches people's ear because it doesn't fade into the background. And that leads us into the second principle, because it's easy to say, oh, just go be original and groundbreaking, but where does the rubber meet the road? Well, I've worked with some pretty iconic original artists, and having this front row seat showed me that it's a natural process for them that you can deliberately invoke yourself when you decide to use this second principle. Have a manifesto and live by it. This can be an overarching manifesto about who you are as an artist. Often these aren't implicitly stated, but the clues are there in plain sight in titles and lyrics. I worked on 2 albums by The Prodigy, Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned, and Invaders Must Die. Pretty clear indication of where they're coming from, right? Björk took her own approach, letting each album have a wildly different character that she would use as a manifesto for her creative process. Of the records I worked on, Vespertine was about tiny frozen fragments of detailed sound, crackling sonic icicles that happened to sound great on tiny laptop speakers. Volta was about being as raw, direct, sweaty, and rude as possible. And Biophilia was patterns in nature, patterns in music. Björk would define simple creative guidelines, then she used them to make some of the most original music and art of her generation. While Liam lived by a core instinct about his band's identity to know whether what was coming out of the speakers was The Prodigy or not. Principle 3. Now that you have a manifesto, you have a direction, but you'll need the other side of this equation to unlock even more creativity and originality in the studio. You see, your most creative work will happen when some options are removed. When you don't have unlimited choices, you commit to your path with even more intensity. That's why the third principle is embrace the power of exclusion. Deliberately blocking off options, methods, and influences will intensify your creative challenge, but it will make focusing your energies into the creative process easier. Whether you remove specific equipment or instruments from the studio, uninstall social media, or stop asking that sarcastic friend for feedback, try creating a protected space for your music to emerge by embracing the power of exclusion. This is when you'll be creating the natural conditions for something unique, something special to emerge in your studio. Principle 4. By now, you're no longer riding on the bandwagon. You have a manifesto that gives your work direction. You use the power of exclusion to defend sovereign ground for your voice to emerge. So now, what do you put into the music itself? Does everything you do need to be some completely original thought? You'll just start second-guessing every idea if you're trying to be original all the time, right? Well, it becomes second nature to make music that stands out when you harness this next principle. You see, when all of your influences are from the same place, or more when they're all in harmony, you blend in. But I've seen artists blow up when they allow their music to become a love letter to the weirdness that drives them, when they mine disparate, contradictory worlds that might be totally out of fashion, but that they combine into something totally fresh. Principle 4 is the most interesting ideas happen when worlds collide. I first saw this close up at a time when we were all trying to make technically perfect records. Nobody had touched a guitar in years, and the graphic design on the flyers and album covers was all shiny 3D models. Tom and Pat from Evil 9 went all in on their love of raw, early hip-hop, crusty horror movies, and the Stone Roses. The album they made turned the entire breakbeat world upside down and still makes new artists go, what the hell even is this, when I put it on during breaks in the studio. So to make music that gets a reaction, don't be afraid. Let your art be a devotional act to the disparate worlds that inspire you. New ideas will naturally flow when you unleash your inner world, when you ignore fashion, go against the grain, and be yourself. Okay, this next principle closely echoes our 3-archetype framework from earlier, but I need to call it out specifically because I see this happening way too often. Now, this has been a struggle that goes back to the dawn of recording, if not earlier. The Beatles used to tease an Abbey Road engineer, calling him 2 dB Norman, because he'd always have limits to how much he could turn something up. And conversely, one of the most legendary engineers of all time, Tom Dowd, got traction early in his career because he was the only engineer who'd actually listen to non-engineering people and just try what they wanted. Like, more bass? No problem. Our version these days is that everyone is convinced that the reason their production sucks is because they're not good enough at mixing. An easy assumption when 90% of our producer feed is plugin tutorials and reviews. That's when the inflexible engineer starts dominating your session. Your artist gets marginalized. The producer is asleep on the couch, and your music flattens out into an indistinct layer cake. I'm slightly exaggerating here, but the point is critical. It's not technical polish that makes your record stand out. It's identity, it's character, it's a point of view. So principle 5 is make more room for your artist. Now, I work behind the scenes as a producer, writer, mixer, programmer, engineer, and collaborator for my artists. And the music started getting way cooler when I stopped trying to get my artists to fit into my process. Instead, I got curious about the way they hear the world. Let your artist influence you as a producer. Let your artist bring chaos to the world of your engineer. Even if you're making records completely on your own, relax that grip of technical perfection and let your unique way of hearing and experiencing the world come to the surface. Your point of view is going to make you stand out way more than professional mixing and mastering. Okay, this next point is really important to flag because there's going to be some social and personal challenges you'll have to go through. You see, as soon as you start doing all the above, especially letting yourself be yourself, combined with that deliberate exclusion, the people around you are going to notice you're changing. Some of them will cheer you on, others will try to cut you down, whether consciously or not. Even though people can be genuinely well-intentioned, thinking they're doing you a favor by keeping you down to earth, that social pressure can wind up clipping your wings, keeping your dreams grounded before they get a chance to take flight. Principle 6 is that the lonely stage is okay. Now, this might sound lofty, but I'm going to go for it anyway. The purpose of the artist in society is to demonstrate to others that freedom exists, that they don't have to live their life inside the imaginary prisons of their mind. And this can be confrontational to some people. So, if you're sticking to your guns, if you're living your belief that you're manifesting something new and original, expect to go through a phase where some folks around you just don't get it. Principle 7. But strangely enough, this stage of loneliness might actually be the first sign that your path is working, that you're on the way to making great music that stands out. Because the natural balancing opposite of some people loving what you're doing is that others are going to hate it. Principle 7 is that great art will polarize. This is a sign that you're developing your own signal. You're building your own wavelength. And once that wavelength starts broadcasting out into the world, you're gonna start attracting your ideal audience. And you'll also repel the people who aren't for you. Principle 8. Okay, so you've gone through this lonely phase and polarized negative reactions. Keep going though, because you'll also be starting to match wavelength with your people. This is when it gets good. You see, there's nothing more powerful in culture than a group of human minds on the same wavelength. And almost all the great art that's been made has been born out of groups of people inspiring, influencing, sharing, and even competing with one another. Principle 8 is lean into your scene. Embrace the people who understand what you do. Cherish the people who spark ideas in your mind. Treasure those who make you think, I better get back to work or I'm going to get left behind. Once you're around the right people, pushing in the same direction, you'll all start making each other better. For me, I came up in multi-room studio facilities in London, where you'd be bumping into other engineers, producers, and artists all the time. Techniques and theories were freely shared over cups of tea. Your mind would expand anytime you got to sit in on someone else's session. A friend would check your work in progress and figure out that one thing you were missing. And the conversations would make you think of the world in ways you've never imagined before. Okay, quick tangent for some real talk. These multi-studio facilities only ever existed in a handful of cities on Earth, and most of them have been turned into apartments by now. That really depressed me, so I got kind of obsessed with creating a new version of that inspiring collaborative environment for the internet age. If something like that sounds like your thing, hit the link below and jump on the list for the next time we open up. Anyway, your scene might be a few friends in your town, that one cool venue that lets new bands play, an internet group, who knows? What's important is that you're clear on what you're into and that you find people on your wavelength. Principle 9. Okay, so far all these principles have been pretty big picture, conceptual, and social. Let's start narrowing in on specific production strategies you can use in the studio. This one is incredibly important if you want people to be moved by your song, if you want that emotional reaction, because it's about making sure there is something sharp enough to pierce your listener's heart. One of the biggest reasons music fails to connect is that it's too ambitious or too vague. Now, ambition sounds like a great idea, but it's really just a sneaky way for your ego to let unnecessary complexity sabotage your music. In this case, complexity is a disguise used by decisions that don't want to be made. And when you don't make those tough calls, there's just too much going on. So your music gets diffused, your message obscured by a lack of focus. It's not sharp enough to pierce your listener's heart. So principle 9 is every song needs a North Star. This is the guiding idea, the reason for this song to exist. It's what you measure all of your production choices against. Are you bringing that North Star into focus, or are you obscuring it? Are you distilling it or diluting it? Does not matter how clever or dense the production is if that guiding light gets lost. So that's if your music is too ambitious, but what about if it's too vague? I produced the Canadian band Dizzy a while back, right before I moved to LA from Montreal. Their song Joshua opens with this killer line. Joshua's a Gemini, he broke my heart. It caught me from the first time I heard the demo. So anyways, on the session, production was progressing nicely. We'd made a beautiful instrumental track, Katie's vocal delivery was lovely, but something kept nagging at me. Why was I so heavily caught by that first line, but kind of forgot the rest of the song? At my suggestion, Katie was cool enough to try sharpening up the lyrics, but the day we recorded the new vocals, it still felt a bit vague. I wound up muting the speakers and mic, asking the guys in the band to give me a second, and I went into the live room to chat. I asked Katie, hey, what's this song actually about? And she burst into tears. The story she told me was mind-blowing. I could never have imagined anything like it. And while the story is hers to share, not mine, it did prove the theory that there was way more going on beneath the surface of the song than was being communicated through the speakers. Katie did go back and do another version of the lyrics that found this perfect tension between imagery and precision. Joshua was a central moment on their debut album, Baby Teeth, and hey, We wound up winning a Juno, which is a Canadian Grammy, and launching the band's career. So, always listen out for how much the music is grabbing you in any moment. And if you feel that grip isn't tight enough, you can diagnose the problem by asking if it's ambition, too much going on, or vagueness. The essence hasn't yet come to the surface. Keep at it until the North Star shines brightly. Principle 10. Okay, so with that North Star crystal clear, it's time for me to bang on my favorite drum in my quest to help you unlock your creative potential in the studio. I'm on record as saying over and over and over that I believe one of the most important skills any producer can have isn't sound design or music theory or multi-bus parallel compression. When you lean into this skill, you'll be able to present your ideas in a way that keeps the listener hooked, because you'll be moving them through a journey with twists and turns. You'll be able to give them the most powerful moments when they're the most ready. You're going to want to go all in on Principle 10, which is arrangement, arrangement, arrangement. What's the moment that hits the hardest, connects the deepest? How do you set it up? How do you come back to it so people don't get bored? Principle 10 is about maximizing the North Star by presenting it in the most effective way possible across time. And that leads us on to this important discussion. It should be a natural byproduct of the previous two principles, but it's something that takes a while to key into, so I wanted to raise it specifically for you. A producer-writer friend in the UK was venting to me because he'd hired an assistant and wasn't sure it was the best move. The reason he was so perturbed was because he was working on a delicate, sensitive, personal acoustic song with an artist. He thought he'd give his assistant a chance to step up, so invited them to make a simple rhythm track for this tender song while he and the artist stepped out for a while. But when he got back, he was shocked. Instead of making something that matched the emotion and mood of this delicate song, his assistant had turned it into a raging banger. Now, we all love a banger, right? But context is everything. The assistant's beats might have been sick on their own, but the song was ruined. That's why Principle 11 is make sure your production is sympathetic, not psychopathic. It took me years to realize that production wasn't about making the most intense, impressive, experimental work in the world. It was about understanding my artist, their manifesto, the song, the point, the meaning, and supporting that in the most sympathetic way possible. So ask yourself, does your production support the feeling of the song, or are you just smashing loud stuff on autopilot? Are you trying to serve the music or show off? Principle 12. Okay, now this last one is super important to make sure that your music connects, that it stands out, that it's memorable, and that it makes people feel. Because there's a bit of a booby trap in a word we hear a lot in music, that things should sound well balanced. But that doesn't mean make everything the same, make everything even. You see, if you make everything sit nicely in its own place, you round off all the sharp edges, give everything the same proportions, it feels comfortable, predictable, and boring. Principle 12 is, well, I don't quite know how to say this, but Principle 12 is that imperfection is hot. When there's tension in art, when there's a bit of friction, that's when it gets interesting. It's like we said earlier, the cooler records get made with an uneven ratio between the archetypes of engineer, producer, and artist. So make your production cooler by letting it be asymmetrical. Let yourself stand out by leaning into your strengths. Don't worry if you're not an expert in another area. That's what makes you cool. Leave room for the weirdness, for the jankiness, for the character. So, now that you know how to stand out by producing trailblazing music with emotional impact, you need to make sure your ideas can flow. I've seen a lot of producers doubt their own abilities and lose heart when the music that's coming out of the speakers doesn't match the sound in their head. So watch this video next, where I'll walk you through practical steps you can take to dial back the doubt while making sure you're always getting better. Oh, and remember, if you're interested in checking out the environment I'm building online to help producers like you unlock your creative potential in the studio, hit the link in the description to get on the list.